Hi guys, welcome to my real world review of my other main lens that I use particularly for photography work is the Samyang 50mm f1.4 Mark II review, again for Sony E mount cameras. This one was a lens that initially I was hesitant to buy, as some of the initial reviews that were up on YouTube seemed to be showing that there was quite a bit of copy variance between the different lenses out there. And it was one that I was like, do I go for it? Do I not? I'm a big fan of the 50mm focal length, and quick wee conclusion here. I'm very impressed overall by my copy. There's certainly no inconsistencies with it, but there are some areas of weakness that I'm still sort of figuring out and not quite mastered where the weakness comes in, and I'll give my thoughts on that in this review. But certainly overall, I would say for the price of this lens, I can't complain, to be honest. So starting off with the positives, I would say it's a very good value option for getting a 1.4 lens. It's very lightweight, has that sort of composite plastic build quality, which again, like the 24, I really love the feeling of this. It makes the lens lightweight, fun to use, it feels nice. It doesn't feel like a rock solid built lens, but I quite like that. I'm used to, I've got the Tamron zooms as well, and it's a similar sort of feeling I get when I use them. They're lightweight, and it makes the lens quite fun to use. Its autofocus speed is good. It's not rapid, but it's fast enough to keep up with all applications of photo and most video scenarios that I would shoot. And again, I typically would use this for filming and photographing weddings, different event work like graduation balls and proms, and some portrait work as well. In the center of the frame, I would say it's extremely sharp, wide open. If you're a pixel peeper, you'll see it's not razor sharp in comparison to some other lenses, but more than sharp enough. And to be honest, I don't think anyone's going to notice the difference unless you're zooming into pixel level. For video, I would say the images it produces are stunning. It really is. The colors are really vibrant, really pop out. The image is extremely sharp across the whole frame, and every time I look back at a clip taken from this lens, I always think it stands out, and more so than any other lens that I've used. Unfortunately, due to the crop mode in slow motion on the A7 IV at 4K, I don't tend to use this as much for video anymore, as I prefer the 50mm field of view, and obviously this would be more a 75, but sometimes if there's time and I want that sort of close, intimate couple look, I'll maybe have this in the bag and still get some shots with it because they do look really good. Again, similar to the 24, I find the background rendering with this lens in both photo and video is gorgeous. You get great separation with this one because of that f1.4, and I find the 50mm focal length really versatile, where I could pretty much do a whole wedding on this lens, and that's a fairly affordable price to get you through most of a wedding. If I was mainly a wedding photographer rather than videographer, I might lean more towards getting the G Master to overcome some of the weaknesses of this lens that I'll discuss shortly. I did get to hold the 50mm G Master at a previous wedding where the photographer there, he was shooting on one, and it certainly is a lot heavier and feels a little bit more front weighted when you're holding the camera up. So, you know, carrying a lens about all day that's that heavy, I'm not sure about, but if you're not too bothered about the weight, then certainly the Sony, I think, would be the better one to go to if you're a photographer by first choice. With the Samyang though, it's very lightweight, makes it easy to carry around all day, and I find once you've learned its weak points, you can certainly work around these easily enough. to overcome them. So what are these weaknesses? I've found that although it's very sharp in the center, the sharpness does fall off at 1.4 out at the edges of the frame, but more so when you're focusing at closer distances. And this is what I'm still trying to find out a little bit about, because when I've been shooting photography events like graduation balls, and there's dancing and subject placement can often be all over the frame, I've found that the subjects are typically really sharp. So even when it's out wide at the edge of the frame, and I typically will use the lens wide open at these events, because if I mess up a shot, it's not like it's a hugely important shot. I can always just take another one. And this is where I've been learning a little bit about, okay, where is that point where you're close enough that the sharpness falls off a bit at the edges. And it's still something I'm sort of experimenting with. At weddings, I don't really want to do too much experimenting with that, so I've tended to do that more with detail shots in the morning. But still, as I say, working out what point can I use this wide open and frame at the edges for a close-up shot. And that's the main sort of concern, if you like, with this lens is sharpness at the edges, wide open, when focusing quite close to something. Well, saying this is all relative, and to be honest, I'm used to using extremely sharp lenses like the Sony 35mm 1.8 and the Tamron 2875 f2.8, and so although I say the sharpness falls off a bit, it's still very usable, and I don't think a non-pixel peeper would spot a difference, and might even be more impressed by the background rendering that would overcome the issues of a slightly lesser sharp lens. One other slight weakness I've noticed is that when doing video, it'll sometimes be slow to start to change focus, to get focus on somewhere else, and I found myself once or twice having to press the shutter button half down to force it into action and get focused on the subject. By no means a major issue, and it's only happened once or twice, but it's certainly worth mentioning that you're not going to get that native, rapid, 100% nails it every time for video. And for filming dancing footage, I've also noticed it struggles to keep up a little bit for video at 1.4. The images look beautiful, but with people moving back and forth, low light environment, it's a really challenging scene for the focusing speed of a lens. And again, I do tend to stick to the 35, either in crop mode, in slow motion for some of these shots now, as its focusing speed is first class. Overall, I think for the price, this is a very good quality and good value lens. It can produce stunning images, and although it has some limitations when using it at f1.4, you can work around these, and with your framing and focusing distance, you can still ensure that you get very sharp images from it. This will mean that you'll need to maybe work a little bit harder on, say, a wedding day, taking care with your settings, whereas with something like the 50mm GM, from what I'm told, it's sharp right across the frame at f1.2, so if you wanted to, you could set it to 1.2 and stay there most of the day just snapping away. But does everyone have the budget for that 1.2, and is it really worth nearly 4 times the price of the Samyang? Will the extra weight become a bit of a pain as the day wears on? Would your couples notice a difference between f1.2 and 1.4? These are all questions that I'm not so sure about, and therefore would say the Samyang 50 should be a strong consideration depending on your usage and your budget.